Hey everyone, I just wanted to make a quick video to share my thoughts about the CBT 1 of Duet Night Abyss. Let me just say, it's a bit rough. I mean, that's to be expected, but I can see the vision behind this game. You can clearly tell it's Warframe, but it's a gacha, and also it comes without the movement creep. I'm not fond of saying this, but I see the potential in this game, but unfortunately, the motivation I needed to push through this game wasn't there. To put it bluntly, the early game experience felt like a slog. Starting with the story, it has some glaring issues. The story itself does touch on some interesting points, but once when you get into the first town, it begins to drag with poor pacing, strange continuity flow, and a bunch of menial tasks. Eventually, when the story hits the climax, it was alright, but for the most part I was really bored. And what came to light after experiencing the beginning of the story were two things. The very quality of the voice acting going from being okay to subpar, and the lackluster storytelling. Starting with the voice acting, I'm not sure what kind of voice direction is going on with this game, but the EN dub does not convey the words on the screen all too well. Even for instances where I'm sure there needs to be more expression, it's just not there.
Doing fine. Just carrying out the orders from higher ups and almost got killed. Thanks for asking. So
Damn it, I really want to throw him into the lamenting lake. Anyway, I must find out what happened to Hunt and what Henrik is really up to.
For the storytelling side, when it comes to typical conversations, it's just your classic everyone standing in a circle yapping until the end of days. And paragraphs upon paragraphs of just dialogue where I'm sure maybe some of it has substance, but really I just wish people get to the point. Worse yet, when it came to the cutscenes, I think it's downright awful. Here, let me show you one of the first cutscenes. Mind you, I didn't edit anything or whatever. This is an actual cutscene. Just look at how many cut edits is in one cutscene. I guess you can't spell cutscene without cut. It's pretty hard to follow the action, and honestly, it made it look stupid. Like, let the scene breathe. But yeah, put all of that together and, well, it's really hard to say, but it's going to take a bit of motivation to push through the story. At least the female protagonist story. Yes, you heard that right. Not only do you play as the female protag, but you also play as the male, each having their own stories. And tell you what, after getting past the female protagonist story and then diving into the male protagonist story, the narrative gets substantially better. In fact, I really like this story, but the issues of its storytelling and voice work is still present. That said, having dual perspectives is going to be a slippery slope. I like what they're doing, but they need to understand that both stories need to be equally as good as the other, because if one story is better than the other, once when you cut to the other perspective where the player might think that it's an inferior story, then you basically subjected them to a worse experience for as long as they are playing in that story. But let me talk about something that stood out to me that I like. The impression system. Basically, this is a RPG social mechanic that gives you points towards a specific attribute depending on your dialogue choices. Much like D&D, your attribute score will then be used in contribution to doing a roll check to obtain side quests or extra rewards. I really do like this as it adds weight to your choices, and I hope they dig deeper into this system. Now, moving on, about the world of Duet Night Abyss, I think this one is a bit of a mixed bag. The reason being is because the world certainly gives me the Final Fantasy vibes of clashing technology and high fantasy together, but at the same time, something feels missing. I think the problem for me is that the backdrop is really amazing with its mystique and weirdness, but the explorable world itself doesn't seem to reflect that. Maybe we haven't seen enough of the world to really see what this game is truly like, but from what I've seen so far, I wasn't exactly impressed. But hey, at least the music is really good. Alright, so let's talk about the gameplay. It's obvious that this game took inspiration from Warframe. It's almost one-to-one. Hell, even the characters that you roll for are basically frames. That said, it's worth noting that this game feels rather clunky. Yes, there's the classic bullet jump, or what this game calls helix jump, Then there's the wall climbing and the wall running that's just like Warframe. But overall, there's something about the movement that doesn't feel smooth when you maneuver around the game. Like, the game feels too stiff, almost as if every move has a wall in between each of your inputs. And the same can be said for its combat. I'm not getting that smooth feeling of weaving my combos into my movement and wreaking havoc wherever I go. It feels more like I need to complete a long animation standing still before I can move again. That's not exactly what's happening, but it somehow feels that way. For combat and movement, all they really need to do is make it tighter and flow better, and then they got something good on their hands. As for the boss fights, they're interesting. I was hoping that these bosses would capitalize on this game's combat system, but what we get are bullet sponges that repeat the same moves over and over. I was hoping for something more dynamic as the fight progresses, where the movesets become more and more complex, but at the end of the day, it's just the same deal. Maybe things will change at higher difficulties when we're at a higher level. Speaking of which, grinding to get ascension and level up materials in their respective missions are quite lengthy, especially the timed missions. Preferably, I hope they shave a small amount of time off these missions, maybe a third or so, and considering the amount we get from these missions, maybe increase the reward yield. Either way, it feels rather long. Now, one last thing I do want to highlight is the gearing system with the demon wedges. This is quite possibly one of the more interesting gearing systems. At first, you'll encounter demon wedges that have static stat boosts, but then you'll find some that have some cool effects that you can mix together and change the way combat will unfold for you. It's really cool, but it's also daunting since you need to do this for your character and 2 weapons. Speaking of the characters and weapons, we need to talk about the gacha system. Yes, this is a gacha game, and the gacha itself is quite interesting. Starting with the beginner banner, you get a reduced amount per 10 roll, and after 50 rolls you get a 5-star. For the feature banner, you have a 100% chance at obtaining the feature character after 90 rolls. But after obtaining that character for the first time, the banner will turn into a 50% chance at obtaining that character. For the weapon banner, it's a 100% guarantee at obtaining the feature weapon on pity, and that's it. Other than that, we have the standard banner where the pity is at 90. Now, this is an interesting approach as obtaining the first copy of a character is rather free to play friendly, while the copies after are for those who dares to push further. Personally, I'm okay with it, and it's most certainly better than what we've seen in other games. As it is CBT1, it's understandable that there's a lot of work to be done. For now, I can see the vision, but I'm curious as to where they're going to take all of this. At the end of the day, it's just Gacha Warframe, which isn't a bad thing, but I hope they eventually branch out and iterate more on this concept until they reach a point where they have their own identity. Normally, I would make a deep dive into each of their systems, but as it is the first CBT, everything is subject to change. There are other things I would like to talk about, like the cosmetic accessories we can put on our characters. It's really cool and they should expand more on that, but I don't think it should be the sole focus of what they should be working on. Then there are the side quests and the dynamic quests. To be honest, there's not a lot of substance here, and there's nothing to write home about, other than the fact that the side quests are what you'd expect, and dynamic quests provide an increase to your impressions. Either way, it's not the main attraction. Look, this video is a first impressions video, so forgive the lack of a deeper dive. Right now, all I can say is that this game feels like a classic RPG game with Warframe mechanics and a gacha system attached to it. In a way, I don't think this game is for me, but that's just how it is. For now, let's let them cook until CBT2 and see what happens then. Till then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!